Hey guys, welcome back to week 3. I'm Danielle.
I'm Trudy.
So glad that you guys are joining us again for another fun week of podcasting.
I love it. I'm so excited. We hope you guys liked last week's episode.
Yes. Definitely let us know what you thought in the comments from last week. If you didn't watch last week's, make sure you watch that before you watch this week. We're going to dive into this week's episode talking about the importance of having a strong team behind you. And when we talk about teams, we're not talking about, being on an actual real estate team together.
Yeah.
We're talking about having, solid attorneys, lenders behind you. So, Trudy, do you want to dive into that a little bit?
Yeah. So a lot of people don't realize, when they start real estate, how important it is to have that solid team of people behind you. And, in the beginning, obviously, you're not going to have those connections.
Right.
It's super important to have a really strong team of lenders, attorneys, inspectors, all of that behind you, because they are what's going to get your transaction to the closing table. A lot of people don't realize when they start real estate that, it's not just you as like an agent. Like there's a lot of moving parts to a transaction. You got to get the house inspected. And then, you need like the lender to get your clients pre-approved and do all of that. You need a super strong attorney. Thank God we have those.
Yes.
To get everything squared away, title and all of that. So it's super important because all it takes is one bad person in a transaction to kind of hold the whole thing up and mess it up for other people.
I definitely agree with that, Trudy. I think, too, we were talking about it when we first started out, when we did have people reach out to us. I think it is important to, go on those coffee meetings, hop on that 10-minute phone call with someone, see what a specific lender and attorney can offer you and your team, and just the experience they have. I think for us, we're really lucky that when we came to our team leader, he's been in the business for 8 years, so he had a lot of those connections. Yeah. But again, it's always good to expand and see what others can do because, maybe one lender can do something that another lender can.
100%.
Or maybe you have an attorney who's going to go the extra mile for you as opposed to a different one. And I think a lot of times, too, even when you're submitting a deal, it goes a long way to have a lender who's going to hop on the phone with the listing agent and really just vouch why your client is super qualified, why there should be no reason why this doesn't get accepted. And even for us, like the past listing I had, there were so many people that we saw like their lenders and their attorneys, and we were like, wow, that's a really solid team to work with.
Exactly.
Like, we've worked with them in the past. We heard great things. We know that they're going to get the job done.
A lot of the times that kind of, inclines the listing agent to go with that offer because they know that the people on the other side have those strong people behind them. Because I've, been part of deals where, sometimes it's the opposite. I see someone's name and I'm like, I don't know, probably shouldn't be working with them. Do I want to work with them? Yeah,
I agree. And I think even too, for example, this past listing that we had, the client, they had a lot of open permits and things like that. So we needed a lender that was going to be able to get the job done. A lot of the times too, the bigger banks, they need everything to be clean, no
squared
open
away
permits. Exactly. So there was someone who did, present a cash offer, which is great. But she said, if I'm not able to get the funds for my closing in time for this, I'm going to have to go with, I'm not going to say the name of the bank. It was a bigger bank. And off the bat, I worked with that bank before with the past client. I knew that they couldn't get the job done. They can't close if there's open permits. And my client's not going to pay all of this money to close their permits when they're moving out of state. So unfortunately, we weren't able to go with that person because they were stuck on that lender. And I knew that they couldn't get the job done. So why am I going to accept the offer? And then
waste everyone's time.
Exactly. It's going to fall through anyway. So I definitely think it goes a long way having a solid team behind you that's really going to get the job done.
Yeah, and also your team, you can use to your advantage. A lot of the times, lenders or attorneys, they could also give you leads. If they know someone going into foreclosure or things of that sort, or they know someone who's looking to be who just got pre-approved and doesn't have an agent, they could kind of send those in your direction. So it's kind of like a symbiotic, right? That's the word. Symbiotic relationship. You help them, they help you type of thing. And it's always, great to just work with people where there's a mutual, I help you, you help me type of thing because you have a lot of trust there and that everything's going to go smooth, and God forbid it doesn't, because obviously everything, things do get a little chaotic, that they are able to clear things up and get the job done. Because I think that's honestly what the scariest part is, the second you think something is going right, it's not in real estate. It's going to go
never goes
wrong
smooth.
and something's going to happen.
Right.
Very rarely does anything ever go perfect, obviously. So you need to make sure that those people know how to handle those situations because, sometimes I don't know what to do in that situation. So I have to lean on somebody and be like, hey, what would I do in this case? Or, can you direct me to somebody who could get this solved?
Right.
So that's super important because that also helps your clients,
I agree.
You want to best represent your clients and, make sure that they know that you have strong people behind you as well.
Yeah, you definitely want someone who's like going to go to bat for you and make sure that they're getting the deal done. Because like you said, chaos always comes up. So you want to make sure that you have someone that's going to get the job done, that's not afraid of a sticky, messy situation. Yep. I think also too from past experience, a deal that, I currently, it should be closed by the time that this airs. But we were working the seller's end, and on the buyer's end, there was just no communication. Yep. And it made the deal really difficult. And we were on, a time crunch because the sellers had to close on an out-of-state property by a certain date. And that state didn't have attorneys, so they don't have like that 30-day grace period that we have for the on or about contract date. Whatever the date is, that's when they have to close. And it was really challenging because, the loan officer, she wasn't answering. And then, when we tried to get information, very unhelpful. One day would tell us one thing, then another day tell us another thing, and just, definitely didn't want to talk to us, didn't want to deal with us. I think also too sometimes you have attorneys where they don't want to speak to anybody but an attorney.
Oh, that's the worst.
Yeah. Had another deal where our attorney, his paralegal was, the one handling the emails, which most times the paralegals are the one who handles the emails. Yeah. And this attorney said, I'm not answering a paralegal. I need to speak directly to you. So I think it gets really frustrating because it's something that, hey, this could be under contract in X amount of days and now it's dragged out. Yep. Or again, it's like we need communication and transparency if everything's going good on the loan side, on the financing side. Yep. And when you have someone who's not answering, that's such a key component. Yep. It makes it frustrating. And I think sometimes, even though, money talks, it might be better sometimes to accept an offer that's a little bit lower, but there's a solid team behind them than someone who's offering a lot of money, but the bank might not be able to get it done. The attorneys are not going to be communicative. So I think that people should understand that goes a long way. It's not just the number you're presenting. Yeah. It's also the team that's backing you up as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to touch on. Communication really is key when you're an agent. Yeah. You can't... real estate has a lot of moving parts and things move very, very quickly. Yeah. One day you could have an accepted offer and the next day you could have a higher offer and then maybe something even after that. So it's super important to make sure that everybody on your team is like in the loop because all it takes is one person not answering, whether it be an agent, a lender, an attorney, to kind of just like basically ruin the whole transaction. Exactly. And that's not what anybody wants to happen. Right. So it's super important if you are getting started in real estate to have those people behind you and make sure that they have time for you and can communicate with you. And if you have a question, they're easily reachable, and vice versa, you need to be easily reachable as well.
Yeah, I think that's like super important, is just having people that are going to be transparent all around and not keep anybody out of the loop, especially in this industry. I know it could seem like, hey, maybe I'm eating dinner, this or that, but sorry, I have to answer my phone. Me not answering my phone could be, the opportunity where somebody else just put in a higher offer and snag the property that my client has been obsessed with. Yep. So I think it's just really important that you and everybody that you're working with is just all on the same page and just communicating back and forth.
Totally agree.
I also think what people don't realize either is it's okay to not know everything.
100,
I think that's why we're working with, experienced lenders, experienced attorneys, because especially for us, we are not lawyers. We are not qualified to give legal advice. We actually can get in a lot of trouble. Yeah. So I think it's important that if your client comes to you with a legal problem, or if they come to you with a question about mortgages, it is, super beneficial for you to have at least top line knowledge and kind of know what your line is going through. Yeah. But I think at the end of the day, it's really important to urge them in the right direction and the right resources, and not just try to guess and be like, oh, well, I think this is it. And then now they're in legal trouble and they're like, well, Trudy and Danielle told me that this was okay. And their attorney is like, well, they're not lawyers.
Yeah. Exactly. So. No, I totally agree. And I think that's something to talk about. A lot of people, obviously when you start in any new field, you kind of want to, present yourself as, like what you're doing, which, to some extent you do. But there's times where you're not going to have that answer and you're not going to know. So don't feel the pressure to be like, oh, I have an answer. Yeah. Like what, when people would ask me questions and I don't know, say I'm on a showing, oh, you know what? I'm not quite sure about that, but let me check with the listing agent and I'll let you know. Like, don't be scared to like push things off a little bit or onto other people, because the last thing you want is somebody suing you and then your whole commission check is like gone because you're paying for an attorney and, you know, they took that from you. It's, you know, don't be scared to like redirect people and your clients.
Yeah, and people don't realize that it'll go much further if you're just honest with your client and you're like, hey, this is my knowledge, but again, I'm not the expert on loans. I'm not the expert on legal advice. You really need to speak to this person because they're the expert in their field. Yeah. And I know me personally, even outside of real estate, if I ask a question to someone and they're like, well, I'm actually not well versed in this, speak to this person, I'm like, I appreciate that.
Of course, me too. I'm like, you know what? Wow, thank you so much for directing me in the right. You know, way so that I can figure it out for myself. Because
I think there's nothing worse than when someone acts like they know everything and then they tell you.
Oh my God, those are the worst kind of people, which... Speaking of, there's a lot of agents out there that do think they know everything, and you know that's not how it is. Don't be scared to just you know push things off to other people and really lean on your team. That's why your team is there.
Right, lean on your resources, lean on the people that are experts in that field.
Yeah.
And for this week's Let's Get Spooky topic, we're going to be diving into the Kings Park Sex Center.
So spooky.
And like I said last week, notice how every haunted thing is in Suffolk. I'm just saying.
Relax.
If you watched last week's episode, you know what I'm talking about.
Whatever. No comment.
So diving into it, I'm sure a lot of people from Long Island know, but for any of you who are not from Long Island or don't know, so Kings Park Psych Center, it was a psychiatric hospital and it was built in the 1800s. So it ran from 1885 until 1996. Shout out to all my 1996 babies. So by the late 1930s, the state began to build upward instead of outward. So I think, Trudy, you were saying that's when, what was it, that famous like 12,
what was it, like 12? Building 93 or something? Yeah, it's like a 13-story building. It's kind of like the main, I guess, building of the Kings Park Psych Center when you look
like the most famous one.
Yeah.
1996, there was a shortage of small community centers, so unfortunately that's why Kings Park was shut down. So that's pretty much in a nutshell the history of it, but I think what the spookiest part is that people can actually still go to those buildings today and they actually walk around it. I personally would never, but this girl right here has. So Trudy, do you kind of want to talk about your experience there?
Sure, yeah. So I'm not that crazy. I didn't go inside of the building because there's a lot of, like, if you look on YouTube and watch the videos, you see there's like, well, there's vandalism, there's broken glass, there's still equipment that they use.
I was going to say, they have like original furniture.
Yeah, which is like super creepy and scary and just kind of like disgusting. But yeah, people always like film videos and like go in there and, you know, that's like a huge problem. I would never do that, like go in the building and like basically trespass. But I did end up walking my dog over there one day and I had like that uneasy feeling that you felt at like Oheka Castle. Like I just felt like somebody was like following me and watching me and I was like rushing to get back to my car because it's, you know, if you haven't been there, it's like, it's a huge building and there's a bunch of other different buildings there. And obviously, like, there's not many people around there if you do go during the day, which I did. But it's just like very, like, it gives you like that creepy vibe. Like, I feel like someone's going to be like in there or like a ghost is going to pop out or someone's going to come from the bushes and like snatch me. Like, I don't know. It gives a very like scary vibe. I
think also the fact that the buildings were from the 1800s, like we're
automatically
older
off the
architecture is always creepier.
No, if it's built before like 1900 or even like 1920s, like off the rip, like I'm assuming it's haunted.
Right, and obviously everything like we said is still there. People have vandalized it, so it adds to that effect where it's like, oh, you see a bed that a patient was in,
probably
or
died
see, like,
in,
or you see like the command center and control center, and it's very creepy.
Yeah,
you think about like what like torment went on there. But I think it's crazy that they never just knocked it down and tried to build over it. They just kept the buildings as is.
Super weird.
I've heard of crazy stories, people going on dates there, which...
What would you do if a date took you there? If you were single, obviously. If a date took you to the King, they were like, you know,
like
let's
go
on a
date.
Know
we were going there.
Yeah, or like, what if somebody was like, you know what? Let's like plan a surprise day, right?
Okay.
And they were driving up. You don't know where you are, and they pull up to the Kings Park Psych Center. What are you gonna do?
You know, I would be really scared. I would think there's something wrong with this person that they think a romantic first date would be to go to a Kings Park Psych Center. Especially if it was like at night. I mean,
no, I would just like accept my fate that I'm probably gonna die or get kidnapped and never.
I mean,
be seen
I also
again.
Too would like probably never drive with someone on a first date.
somewhere.
Yeah. But I mean, regardless, definitely very creepy that like all the buildings are still there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the 13th like story building still a thing, or is it like
it's still there,
13 stories?
Yeah, it's still there. Wow. It's like super dilapidated, like, you know, half of it's falling apart. Yeah. And, you know, a lot of people like to walk over there. Across the way, I think there's kind of like a state park situation.
Oh, okay.
Which I'm sure is beautiful. I'm sure that's nice.
Right.
Maybe that was part of the Kings Park Psych Center and they just turned it into like a state park. I don't really know.
Right.
That part seemed really pretty, but
yeah,
I would not go inside. I definitely think, you know, these people probably suffered there, you know, mentally. Obviously they suffered, maybe physically.
Yeah.
Most likely, probably, because at that time they were still performing like prefrontal lobotomies. Yeah. So definitely some suffering went on, and I just feel like I wouldn't want to, you know, kind of like disturb, like,
I know,
I guess, like the tortured like people.
I also think what's crazy is this ties into what you and I were talking about. Why are people so willing to go to a haunted hotel or a haunted, you know, old psych center, but they won't live in a haunted house? Like, I just think that's so interesting, and I think it kind of stems from the fact that if you're going to a hotel, you're probably not staying for more than a few days.
Yeah, just an extended little stay. Yeah,
I think people are kind of curious.
It feeds into that a little bit. It kind of like
the adrenaline. Yeah, is it real? Is it not real?
Fills their appetite for like that hunger, you know, that like haunting that they want.
Right, as opposed to living in a haunted house where it's like, hey, that could be like a forever home.
Yeah.
So you don't want to be like living with that. But I mean, still, me personally, I wouldn't go anywhere that I knew was haunted.
Yeah, no, me neither. And it's also super dangerous to just be like walking around that place. There's like windows that are broken, medical supplies. Like, people obviously go there and do like not good stuff. Yeah. So yeah, definitely not a place that you want to be, or especially at night. I would never want to go there at night. It's so scary.
Yeah, no, I agree. Do you want to do the hot take?
Hot take of the week. I'm fucking hot. Jeez. For the hot take of the week, the question we are asking is fixer upper or move in turnkey ready.
I think this is like an interesting one that we always go back and forth between, because obviously if you have a turnkey beautiful home, it's probably on the higher end of your budget as opposed to a fixer upper, which, you know, obviously will be cheaper. Me personally, if I had the means, I'm not a creative person. I'm not an interior designer. I have a hard time going into a home and being like, oh,
seeing the vision.
Yes, this is how I would decorate it. You know, I would love to hire an interior designer when I have a house one day. So I probably would do the turnkey ready to move in home. But I know people kind of rather make it their own. So what do you think?
I would like a fixer-upper. I like putting my own touch on everything. I want to make everything the way that I want it. I mean, ideally, if I had the money, I would love to just build a home, you know, from the ground up, make it how I want.
Right.
But, you know, definitely in this market, I'd probably pick a fixer-upper because that's kind of what most people are leaning towards.
Right.
But I guess this is a good question to ask. Would you, if it was the top of your budget, would you rather a move-in ready home, or would you rather take a fixer-upper and have that extra money to make it your own?
I think if it was the top of my budget, but I wasn't overexerting myself, like I wasn't living paycheck to paycheck because of that, I would still pick the turnkey home. I do see what people are saying with the fixer-upper. I think there are situations and the degree of the fixer-upper.
Yeah.
Because I have seen homes where it definitely needs TLC, but it's like, oh, maybe it's just the kitchen that needs TLC.
Yeah, like you could like live in it still, even though it's maybe like a little ugly or dated and like not your style.
Not your
it's livable.
It's livable.
Yeah.
But I think if it's like the kitchen needs to be done, all the bedrooms are completely outdated, the bathrooms, like maybe you could live in it. I don't know, myself personally, I would kind of get the ick. And that's just me personally. And again, I'm not a handy person. I don't see that vision. And I feel like you also have to kind of see, would you end up spending the same amount anyway with a fixer-upper? But again, with a fixer-upper, you could budget. So maybe 5 years from now, you could do the kitchen. Yeah. 5 years from now, you could do the bathroom, if that's something you're okay with. But I'm still going to go with the turnkey home. What about you?
I honestly, I feel like I would probably, at that point, if it was the top of my budget, go with the like turnkey home. Just because I know a lot of the time with fixer-uppers, once you start like ripping open the walls and stuff, something always like happens. Yeah, you know, at that point, you know, you've like torn down half your house and then now you need a new roof, or the hot water heater's like about to go, or, you know, it's always more than what it always is. And you could always budget for it, but you're always going to go over that budget. It's never going to be like, you know, by the number that you thought it was going to be. So at that point, I'd probably pick a move-in ready home. Yeah. No headaches, and just be able to live my life in peace.
I agree. I think it also, too, depends on how long you're planning on staying in the house. Like, if you're only planning on staying somewhere, let's say, for 5-6 years, maybe it makes more sense to have that, you know, fixer-upper house, put a little bit of money into it, look at it as like an investment property, sell it and like make it back, as opposed to overexerting yourself, over, doing your budget or, maybe being in an uncomfortable situation from a monthly mortgage standpoint, just to have that beautiful, ready to go turnkey home that it's not even your forever home.
Yeah.
So I think that also plays a part in seeing what fits best for like your specific timeline.
Yeah, definitely something to consider.
Yeah. Because
definitely something I like to talk to my clients about too. A lot of people don't think like that when they, they see that pre-approval number and they're just like, oh, I'm ready to go. But they don't really think about all the pros and cons of like both.
I agree, because I had a great couple that I worked with last year, and there was a home that they saw in Wantagh, and definitely needed some work. We knew that going into it. That's why it was priced the way it was priced, because it needed renovations, especially compared to all the other houses on the block. But that's a house that she said to me, like, this is where I want to have my children grow up, and I see myself here forever. I want to this is something that maybe I want to pass down to my kids. So it's like, in that sense, it makes sense for them to build up. It makes sense for them to put in that TLC if that's like their forever home. So I think for different people it makes sense for certain things. So for this week's Let's Get Real, we have a question from Andrew. So he said, what would be your best advice for new agents coming into the industry in 2024? Trudy, do you want to take it away?
Sure. So I think my best advice for new agents coming into the industry right now would be to really consider all your options, make sure you're ready to make that jump financially. And I would also make sure that you're joining, a team. I really feel like when you are first starting off, it's super important to join a team. Instead of being a solo agent, obviously, like we said last week, that's something that you could work towards. And in the beginning, it's really fundamental to have like that mentorship. Maybe if you don't want to join a team, definitely at least have a mentor, somebody you can lean on, because stuff is going to come up and you're not going to know the answers and you're not going to know what to do. It comes with time and experience in the business. So I definitely feel like it's super important to just have that person that you could like lean to and be like, hey, if, blank hits the fan, like I know that you can help me figure it out.
Yeah, I agree. And I think too, what we were talking about before is making sure that you're okay with putting in a lot of hours and a lot of work and not seeing a return right away, knowing that this is, not an easy field, something that you really have to work towards. I think also too, being okay with sacrificing your weekends, being okay with, answering phone calls outside of the 9 to 5 window. I've had so many times clients call me at 10, 11 p.m. and it's like, if that's what works best for their schedule, like I have to be available. So I think that's super important to kind of be okay with being uncomfortable.
I also think it's important to be comfortable with, like you said, like another day, the rejection. Because it's a lot of, honestly it is, we're keeping it real. It's a lot of rejection. You see all these agents doing super well, which, of course could be the case for, some people. But when you're first starting out, the rejection is real. You really need to overcome the rejection and those objections from other people, sellers, agents, friends, family, whatever.
Especially in this market, we're competing against 20 plus people for home.
Exactly. And people are not friendly. They are not nice.
Especially in New York.
Especially here. You need to have a little bit of thick skin, to keep persevering and pushing through, because if you really want to, make it in this industry, you got to be able to, stick it out and be tough and not let little people get to you.
I agree. And I think too, lastly, what I want to touch on with that is just being, okay with putting yourself out there. I think a lot of people are really scared to do, stuff like this, a podcast, or even just filming like a 30-second reel.
100%. I mean, honestly, we spoke about it. Like us last year, this time, like I probably would have never have gotten in front of a camera, like until I met Danny. But, she gave me like the encouragement, and we have a great team and people behind us and family who really support us and what we're doing. But it really is scary to put yourself out there and feel judged.
And I think, like we were saying, especially in this market, especially with, digital being the new way, like you really do have to find creative outlets to get those contacts, get that business. And exactly like you said, Trudy, like last year I was definitely scared to do it. I did dabble in reels a little bit, and don't get me wrong, I definitely was scared. I was scared that if I, shared my reels from my business page to my personal page, that people were going to make fun of me. But then I thought about, like, anybody who's making fun of me is not my friend.
100%.
And clearly they're a hater anyway.
Exactly. And guess what? When we're making more money than them, they're not going to be laughing at us.
I mean, look at how many people probably laughed at, like, Charlie D'Amelio on TikTok. And
look at her. Like Alex Earl, same people, same thing.
And they're so young and making more money than people can
will ever
imagine.
See in their lifetime, probably.
So that's why I think, don't worry about what other people think about you. All that matters is who you are as a person, what your family and friends think of you, and anyone else that's not in your corner is just a hater.
And I feel like if you're not scared doing something, then you're not doing it for like the right reasons. Like it should be scary because, you know, there is a lot on the line when you start real estate, but it can be very rewarding and very successful. And I think if you're really passionate about it and you really want to help people and this is your dream, you know, then I feel like you should really go for it, you know. Fuck the haters.
So we have a question for all of you. Sound off below in the comments. Do you believe that faking it till you make it is necessary in the business? And what are your thoughts there? I know that was kind of a hot topic we were talking about this morning. So we kind of want to hear from you guys. Do you think you have to, you know, kind of pretend to be more successful than you might be? I want to hear what you guys have to say.
Yeah, I'm excited. Sound off in the comments. And that's a wrap for episode 3. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.